The snow began falling the afternoon. Fenna Nox crossed the last ridge before the way station, and by the time she pushed through the heavy door into warmth, the world outside had turned into a howling white void that swallowed the trail behind her. The interior held 6 tables, a fieldstone hearth, and a counter worn smooth by decades of travelers leaning into their drinks. Only 3 others occupied the space: a merchant sleeping upright in the corner, his chin on his chest, and 2 trappers arguing in low voices over a map. None of them looked up when she entered. The man behind the counter did. He was perhaps 30, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of slate. He wore a simple wool shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows despite the cold outside, and when he moved to pull a chair closer to the fire for her, he did so without speaking. Fenna set down her pack, heavy with bundled herbs and glass vials wrapped in cloth. Her fingers ached from gripping the straps through the storm. She was shorter than most human women, her build lean and corded from years of walking between settlements, and the green of her skin looked almost gray in the firelight. Her tusks were small, barely visible when her mouth was closed, and she kept it closed now, uncertain of the welcome she would receive. The man returned to the counter, and she heard the soft clink of ceramic. He came back with a clay pot and a cup, both steaming. The scent reached her first: chamomile, mint, something else she could not immediately place. Honey, perhaps, or a touch of elderflower. He set the cup before her on the small table beside the chair, filled it from the pot, and stepped back. "How much?" she asked, her voice rough from hours of silence on the trail. He shook his head once. A simple gesture, not unkind. Fenna looked down at the tea. The warmth rising from it touched her face, and something in her chest tightened. She had not expected kindness. She had expected tolerance at best, the sort of cold civility that came with coin exchanged. This was something else. She lifted the cup with both hands and drank. The heat spread through her, loosening muscles she had not realized were clenched. "Thank you," she said. He nodded and returned to the counter, where he began slicing bread with slow, deliberate movements. She watched him work. There was a precision to everything he did, an economy of motion that spoke of long practice. He did not waste effort. He did not speak. And yet the silence did not feel hostile. It felt almost companionable, like the quiet between old friends who no longer needed to fill every moment with words. The storm raged through the night. Fenna slept in a corner near the fire, wrapped in her cloak, her pack beneath her head. When she woke in the gray light before dawn, the man was already awake, building up the fire. He glanced at her, then went to the counter and prepared another pot of tea. This time she noticed the way he measured the leaves, the care he took with the water temperature. He was not merely brewing tea. He was performing a ritual. She sat up, rolling her shoulders to work out the stiffness. "You are the innkeeper here," he paused, then nodded. "You have a name." He hesitated, and for a moment she thought he would not answer. Then he said, Cyrus Jenson." His voice was low, a little hoarse, as though he did not use it often. She liked the sound of it. "I am Fenna," she said. "Fenna Nox. I travel, selling herbs, treating minor ailments, whatever work I can find." Cyrus poured the tea and brought it to her. This time he lingered, his gaze moving to the pack beside her. "You are an herbalist." "Yes." He nodded slowly, as though confirming something to himself. "The storm will last another day, maybe 2. You are welcome to stay. I can pay. No need." She wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. There was something there, something that went deeper than simple hospitality. A wound, perhaps, or a memory. She had seen that look before in people who carried their grief like a stone in their chest, never quite able to set it down. The day unfolded slowly. The merchant left when the wind died down enough to see the trail, muttering about lost time. The trappers stayed, drinking and playing cards. Cyrus moved through the space like a shadow, tending the fire, preparing simple meals, speaking only when necessary. Fenna watched him. She could not help it. There was something about the way he moved, the quiet competence, the gentle care he took with small things. He refilled her tea without being asked. He brought her a bowl of stew, thick with vegetables and venison, and set it down with a cloth napkin folded beside it. When she thanked him, he simply nodded and moved on. By evening, she found herself speaking to him without expecting a response. She told him about the family 3 days south who had traded a smoked ham for a salve that eased the grandmother's joint pain. She described the forest she had crossed, where the trees grew so thick the snow barely reached the ground. She mentioned the fox she had seen, red against white, watching her from a fallen log. Cyrus listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer commentary. But he was listening, she could tell, because sometimes his hands would still in whatever task he was performing, and his gaze would fix on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. That night before she slept, she asked, "Why tea?" Cyrus was cleaning the counter, wiping it down with a damp cloth. He stopped. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, quietly, "It is something I used to do, for someone. Someone who is gone, yes." She waited, but he did not elaborate. She did not push. Grief was a private thing, and she understood the need to hold some sorrows close. The second day brought a brief respite from the storm. The wind calmed, and the snow fell in soft, lazy flakes that drifted more than fell. Cyrus went out to check the woodpile and clear the path to the well. Fenna followed, needing to stretch her legs after a day confined indoors. The cold bit at her face, sharp and clean. She helped him carry wood, stacking it inside the door. He glanced at her, and she thought she saw the ghost of a smile. "You do not have to," he said. "I know, I want to." They worked in silence, their breath clouding in the frigid air. When they finished, Cyrus went to the well and drew up a bucket. Fenna watched him haul the rope hand over hand, his movements steady and sure. When the bucket reached the top, he poured half into a second pail and handed it to her. They walked back together, and the simple act of carrying water beside him felt strangely significant, as though they were marking a new understanding between them. Inside, she helped him prepare the evening meal. He sliced vegetables while she chopped herbs from her stores, adding them to the pot. The scent filled the way station, rich and earthy. The trappers returned from checking their lines, stamping snow from their boots and exclaiming over the smell. When Cyrus served the stew, they ate with gusto, and one of them clapped him on the shoulder, grinning. "You have been holding out on us, Jenson. This is the best meal you have made in months." Cyrus glanced at Fenna, and this time the smile was real, small, but unmistakable. She felt warmth bloom in her chest. That night, after the trappers had retired and the fire burned low, Fenna sat at the table nearest the hearth, sorting through her herbs. She had laid them out on a cloth, checking each bundle for mold or spoilage. Cyrus approached, carrying 2 cups of tea. He set one beside her and took the seat across from her, cradling his own cup in both hands. "You do this often?" he asked, nodding at the herbs. "Every few days. The damp can ruin them if I am not careful." He watched her work for a moment, then said, "You know your craft." "I learned from my mother. She was a healer in the eastern hills. She taught me which plants to gather, how to prepare them, what signs to look for in the body." Fenna paused, her fingers stilling on a bundle of dried willow bark. "She died when I was 16. Fever took her." "I am sorry." She looked up at him. "What about you? You are more than an innkeeper, I think." Cyrus hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I set bones, treat injuries. People come to me when they are hurt." "A bone setter." "Yes, I learned from a physician who passed through here years ago. He stayed a season, taught me what he could. It is not much, but it helps. It is more than most have out here. He looked down into his tea, his expression distant. Not always enough. She understood then, or thought she did. The person he had made tea for, the one who was gone, it had been someone he could not save. The weight of that failure sat on him like a yoke, and he carried it in silence because he did not know how else to bear it. "You cannot save everyone," she said softly. "I know. But you blame yourself anyway." He met her eyes, and the pain there was raw and unguarded. "He was my brother, 10 years old. The fever came on fast, and nothing I did made a difference. I tried everything. Every remedy I knew, every treatment. I stayed with him, made him tea, kept him cool. None of it mattered. He died in my arms." Fenna felt her throat tighten. "I am sorry, Cyrus. It has been 5 years. I thought the grief would ease, but it has not. I stopped making tea for others after that. It was his favorite thing, the ritual we shared. Making it for anyone else felt wrong. Like a betrayal. But you made it for me," he nodded. "I do not know why. You came in from the storm, and I looked at you, and it felt right." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. His skin was warm, rough from work. He did not pull away. They sat like that for a long moment, the fire crackling softly beside them, the storm forgotten beyond the walls. The third day dawned clear and bright, the sky a hard, painful blue. The storm had passed. Fenna knew she should leave, continue her circuit through the settlements, but something held her back. She told herself it was practical. The trail would be treacherous after so much snow. Better to wait another day, let the path settle, but the truth was simpler and more complicated. She did not want to go. Not yet. Cyrus seemed in no hurry to see her leave either. He moved through the way station with the same quiet competence, but there was a new ease in his movements, a lightness that had not been there before. He smiled more. Not often, but enough that she began to watch for it, treasuring each small glimpse. In the afternoon, a woman arrived at the way station, her face pale and tight with worry. She carried a child in her arms, a boy no more than 5, his skin flushed and damp with sweat. "Cyrus," she said, her voice shaking, "please, it is the fever. It started this morning and he is getting worse." Cyrus took the child from her arms with gentle care, laying him on one of the tables near the fire. He felt the boy's forehead, checked his pulse, looked into his eyes. Fenna stepped closer, her training taking over. She could see the signs, the rapid breathing, the glazed look, the way the child's small body trembled. "How many others?" she asked the woman. The woman looked startled to be addressed by an orc, but desperation overrode fear. "3 in my household. 2 more in the village. It is spreading." Fenna exchanged a glance with Cyrus. His face had gone pale, and she saw the shadow of old pain cross his features. She touched his arm, grounding him. "We need to work together," she said quietly. "My herbs and your knowledge, we can help them." He looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. He nodded. They worked through the afternoon and into the evening. Fenna prepared infusions of feverfew and willow bark while Cyrus examined the child, monitoring his temperature and keeping him hydrated. The woman stayed close, her hands twisting in her apron. By nightfall, the boy's fever had broken slightly, enough that he fell into a restful sleep. The woman wept with relief. "Thank you," she said, gripping Fenna's hands. "Thank you both." After she left, carrying the sleeping child, Cyrus sank into a chair, his shoulders bowed. Fenna sat beside him. "You did well," she said. "We are not finished. There will be more, I know, but we will face them together." He looked at her, and the gratitude in his eyes was almost overwhelming. "Why are you staying? You could leave. This is not your fight." "It became my fight the moment I saw that child. And besides," she hesitated, then spoke the truth, "I do not want to leave. Not while you need me. I need you, he repeated softly as though testing the words. Yes, I suppose I do. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and urgency. The fever spread through the small hamlet clustered around the way station, striking children and elders hardest. Cyrus and Fenna moved between households, treating the sick, offering what comfort they could. She learned the rhythm of his work, the way he touched his patients with care, speaking in that low, steady voice to calm their fears. He learned to trust her instincts, to follow her lead when it came to herbal remedies. They became a team, seamless and efficient, but the toll was heavy. One of the elders died despite their best efforts, and Fenna held Cyrus as he shook with silent sobs, the old grief and the new tangling together. She did not tell him it would be all right. She did not offer empty platitudes. She simply stayed, her arms around him, letting him feel what he needed to feel. In the quiet moments between crises, she began to notice things. The way he always ensured she ate, even when he forgot to feed himself. The way he watched her when he thought she was not looking, his gaze soft and wondering. The way he stood a little closer than necessary when they worked side by side, as though drawn to her by some invisible thread. She was falling in love with him. She had been since that first cup of tea, she realized. Since the moment he had offered kindness without expectation, warmth without condition. He was everything she had not known she needed, steady, gentle, strong in the ways that mattered. And the realization terrified her, because she did not know if he felt the same. He cared for her, she thought, but love, that was a different thing entirely. One evening, after a particularly difficult day in which they had nearly lost a young girl to the fever, Fenna found herself alone with Cyrus in his small room behind the way station. It served as both his quarters and his surgery, with shelves lined with jars and tools, a narrow bed in the corner, and a table covered in notes and sketches. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. She knelt before him, placing her hands on his knees. "Talk to me," she said. "I keep seeing him," Cyrus whispered. "My brother. Every time I treat a child, I see his face, I hear his voice. I remember how helpless I felt. You are not helpless now. You are saving them, Cyrus. We are saving them. But what if it is not enough? What if I fail again? Then we fail together, and we keep trying. That is all anyone can do." He looked at her, and his hand came up to cup her cheek. His thumb brushed over her skin, tracing the line of her cheekbone. "You are remarkable, Fenna. You know that," her breath caught. "I am just doing what I know how to do." "No, you are more than that. You are brave and kind and brilliant, and I do not know what I would have done without you these past weeks." "Cyrus, I need to tell you something." He took a breath, steadying himself. "The tea I made for you that first night, I had not made it for anyone since my brother died. It was our ritual, something we shared. I thought I could never do it again without feeling that loss. But when I made it for you, it did not hurt. It felt right. Like I was honoring him, not betraying him. And every day since, you have shown me that healing does not mean forgetting. It means carrying the past with you and still choosing to move forward." Fenna felt tears prick her eyes. "You gave me that tea before you knew me. I gave it to you because I saw something in you. Something that called to me, and I have been falling for you ever since." She kissed him. It was not a gentle kiss, not tentative or questioning. It was fierce and certain, an answer to the longing that had been building between them. He kissed her back with equal fervor, his arms coming around her, pulling her close. They tumbled onto the bed, wrapped in each other, and for a little while the world outside ceased to exist. Later, as they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Fenna traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "I need to tell you something too," she said quietly. "You can tell me anything." She hesitated, gathering her courage. This was a part of herself she had never shared, a wound she had carried in silence for years. But if he could be brave, so could she. When I said my mother died of fever, that was true, but I did not tell you the rest. The village blamed me. They said I should have saved her, that an herbalist's daughter should have known what to do. They drove me out, told me I was cursed, that my touch brought death instead of healing. I was 16 and alone, and I believed them. For years I believed them. I wandered because I thought I did not deserve a home. I helped people because I needed to prove I was not the monster they said I was. Cyrus pulled her closer, his lips against her hair. You are not a monster. You are the furthest thing from it. I know that now, or I am starting to. Being here with you, working beside you, seeing the lives we have saved together, it has shown me that I am not defined by the one person I could not save, that I am more than my worst moment. We both are, he said softly. They lay in silence for a while, listening to the wind outside and the crackle of the fire in the main room. Fenna felt something loosen inside her, a knot she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there. She was safe here. She was loved. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe she deserved it. The turning point came 2 weeks into the outbreak. The fever had reached its peak, with nearly every household touched by illness. Cyrus and Fenna had barely slept, running on determination and the occasional snatched hour of rest. Fenna's supplies were running low, and she knew they needed something more, something stronger if they were going to turn the tide. She spent an evening going through Cyrus's notes, reading his careful observations of his brother's illness. She cross-referenced them with her own knowledge, with the patterns she had seen in the current outbreak. And slowly, piece by piece, an idea took shape. Cyrus's brother had loved a particular blend of tea. Cyrus had mentioned it in passing, describing the ingredients: chamomile for calm, mint for clarity, elderflower for comfort, and a touch of honey to sweeten. But there had been something else, something Cyrus had added in those final days, hoping it would help. He could not remember what it was, only that it had smelled faintly of citrus and earth. Fenna thought she knew. Lemon balm and ginger root, both known for their ability to ease fever and settle the stomach. But there was more to it than that. The act of making the tea, the ritual of care and love, had been as important as the ingredients themselves. It had been a way of saying, I am here. I will not leave you. You are not alone. She prepared the blend carefully, measuring each component with precision. When it was ready, she brought it to Cyrus. He was in the surgery, treating a young boy whose fever had spiked dangerously high. She knelt beside him and held out the cup. What is this? He asked. Your brother's tea, the one you made for him. Cyrus stared at the cup, his face going pale. How did you? I read your notes. I listened to what you told me, and I know herbs. This is it, Cyrus. This is what you made for him. His hands shook as he took the cup. He breathed in the steam and his eyes closed. Yes, this is it. Give it to the boy. Let it help him. Let it be a part of the healing, not a reminder of loss. Cyrus looked at her, and she saw the moment he understood. This was not about replacing his brother or forgetting the past. It was about reclaiming something beautiful from the grip of grief. It was about transforming pain into purpose. He held the cup to the boy's lips, helping him drink in small sips. The child coughed, then settled, his breathing easing. Over the next hour, his fever began to drop. By morning, he was sitting up, asking for food. His mother wept and hugged them both, and Cyrus held Fenna's hand so tightly she thought he might never let go. They used the tea blend for the other patients, combining it with Fenna's other remedies. The results were not miraculous, but they were enough. Slowly, steadily, the fever began to retreat. Fewer new cases appeared. Those who were sick started to recover. The hamlet, which had been shrouded in fear and sorrow, began to breathe again. When the last patient was declared well, Cyrus and Fenna stood outside the way station, looking out over the snow-covered landscape. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. He slipped his arm around her waist, and she leaned into him, exhausted but content. "We did it," he said. "We did. I could not have done this without you, Fenna. You saved me as much as you saved them." "And you saved me," she said. "You showed me I could trust again, that I could be part of something, part of someone's life without fear." He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "I want you to stay, not just for now, but always. I want to build a life with you, a practice, a home, whatever you want. I just want you here beside me." Her heart felt too large for her chest. "I want that too, more than anything." He kissed her, slow and sweet, and she tasted hope on his lips. The following weeks were spent preparing. Cyrus's surgery, which had been a cramped room behind the way station, was expanded into a proper clinic. They cleared out a storage shed attached to the building, knocked down a wall, and built shelves for herbs and medicines. Fenna organized her supplies with meticulous care, labeling jars and arranging them by use. Cyrus set up a proper examination table, a desk for notes, and a small stove for brewing remedies. The villagers helped, donating time and materials, grateful for the lives that had been saved. On the day of the clinic's opening, people came from all over the region. Some brought gifts, preserves, smoked meats, hand-carved furniture. Others simply came to offer thanks. The way station was filled with laughter and conversation, a celebration of life and community. Fenna moved through the crowd, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known before. These people accepted her, valued her, saw her not as an orc or an outsider but as one of their own. Cyrus stood beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Overwhelming. Wonderful, right? Good, because this is just the beginning." As the sun set and the guests began to leave, Fenna and Cyrus found themselves alone in the new clinic. She ran her hand over the smooth wood of the examination table, marveling at how much had changed in such a short time. Cyrus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "There is one more thing I want to do," he said. "What is that?" "I want to tell you about him. My brother. His name was Elliot, and he loved stories. He would beg me to tell him tales before bed, and I would make up the most ridiculous adventures just to see him laugh. He was brave and curious and kind, and he deserved so much more than the short life he got." Fenna turned in his arms, looking up into his face. "Tell me everything." And he did. He spoke for hours, sharing memories both painful and joyful. He described Elliot's laughter, his stubborn determination, the way he had faced his illness with a courage that had broken Cyrus's heart. He cried, and Fenna held him, listening to every word. When he finally fell silent, she kissed his forehead. "He would be proud of you," she said. "Of what you have become, of what you are doing here. I hope so. I know so." They stood together in the quiet clinic, surrounded by the tools of their trade and the evidence of their shared purpose. And Fenna realized that this, right here, was what she had been searching for all along. Not just a place to belong, but a person to belong with. Someone who understood her scars and loved her anyway. Someone who needed her as much as she needed him. "I love you, Cyrus Jenson," she said. "I love you, Fenna Nox," he replied. Winter gave way to spring, and the clinic thrived. People came from miles around, seeking treatment for injuries and illnesses. Cyrus's reputation as a skilled bone-setter grew, and Fenna's knowledge of herbs became legendary. They worked side by side, their partnership deepening with each passing day. They learned each other's rhythms, anticipated each other's needs, moved through their tasks with the ease of long practice. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, they would sit together in the small room they now shared. Cyrus would read aloud from medical texts while Fenna mended clothes or prepared remedies for the next day. Sometimes they would simply talk, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future. And always before bed, Cyrus would make tea. The ritual had become theirs now, a shared tradition that honored Elliot's memory while creating something new. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Fenna said, "I need to tell you the rest, about my past." Cyrus set down his book, giving her his full attention. "I am listening." She took a breath, gathering her courage. "After my mother died and the village cast me out, I wandered for 3 years. I took whatever work I could find, mostly helping with harvests or tending animals. I did not use my herbal skills because I was afraid I would fail again, that people would see me as cursed. But one winter, I came across a homestead where a man had broken his leg. His wife was desperate and there was no one else for miles. I set the bone as best I could and gave him herbs for the pain. He healed. And when he did, he told me I had a gift, that I should not waste it. That was when I started traveling as a healer, but I never stayed anywhere long. I was always waiting for the moment when I would fail, when people would realize I was not as skilled as they thought. I was waiting to be cast out again." "But you are not waiting anymore," Cyrus said. "No, because you have shown me that I do not have to be perfect. That it is all right to be afraid, as long as I do not let the fear stop me. And because I know here with you I am home, I do not have to keep running." He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "You will never have to run again. Not from me, not from this place. You are home, Fenna, for as long as you want to be. Forever then. Forever it is." The seasons turned, spring giving way to summer. The clinic expanded again, this time adding a small garden where Fenna could grow her own herbs. She spent hours tending the plants, her hands in the soil, her face turned to the sun. Cyrus would join her sometimes, pulling weeds or carrying water, content to be near her. They spoke little during these times, but the silence was comfortable, full of unspoken understanding. One afternoon, a group of travelers arrived at the way station. Among them was an older orc woman, her skin a darker green than Fenna's, her tusks worn with age. She walked with a cane, her movements slow but dignified. When she saw Fenna in the garden, she stopped. "Fenna Nox," the woman said, her voice rough. "I did not think I would ever see you again." Fenna looked up, her heart lurching. She recognized the woman, Marga, one of the healers from her mother's village, one of the people who had stood silent when Fenna was driven out. "Marga," Fenna said carefully. The older woman approached, her expression unreadable. "I heard you were here. Working as a healer, I had to see for myself. And now you have seen. What do you want?" Marga sighed, leaning heavily on her cane. "I want to apologize. What we did to you, what I allowed to happen, it was wrong. You were a child, grieving your mother, and we blamed you for something beyond your control. I have carried that guilt for years. I do not expect your forgiveness, but I needed you to know I am sorry." Fenna stared at her, emotions warring inside. Anger, hurt, a small flicker of something that might have been compassion. She thought of the girl she had been, frightened and alone, cast out by the people who should have protected her. And she thought of the woman she had become, strong and capable, loved and valued. Marga's apology did not erase the past, but it acknowledged it, and perhaps that was enough. "I do not forgive you," Fenna said slowly. "Not yet, maybe not ever, but I accept your apology. And I hope you have learned from your mistake." Marga nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I have. Thank you, Fenna, for hearing me." She turned to leave, but Fenna stopped her. "Wait, are you in need of treatment? My joints pain me, but I did not come here for that. Sit down. Let me look at you. Marga hesitated, then lowered herself onto a bench at the edge of the garden. Fenna examined her, noting the swelling in her knuckles and the way she favored her left leg. She prepared a salve from the herbs in her basket, working quickly and efficiently. When it was ready, she handed it to Marga. Rub this into the joints twice a day. It will ease the pain and reduce the swelling. Marga took the jar, cradling it in her gnarled hands. Thank you. You are a fine healer, Fenna. Your mother would be proud. Fenna felt a lump rise in her throat. I hope so. After Marga left, Cyrus found Fenna sitting in the garden, staring at nothing. He sat beside her, not speaking, just being there. She leaned against him, drawing comfort from his presence. That was brave, he said finally. It did not feel brave. It felt necessary. Bravery often does. She turned to look at him, and the love in his eyes steadied her. I am glad you were here, even if you were inside. Knowing you were near made it easier. I will always be near, Fenna, for as long as you want me. Forever then, forever it is. Summer deepened, the days long and warm. The clinic was busier than ever, and Fenna and Cyrus fell into a comfortable routine. They woke early, shared breakfast, and spent the day treating patients. In the evenings, they worked in the garden or tended to the waystation guests. At night, they retreated to their room where they talked and laughed and loved each other with an intensity that never seemed to fade. One night, as they lay tangled together in bed, Cyrus said, I want to marry you. Fenna's heart stopped, then started again, racing. What? I want to marry you. I want everyone to know you are mine and I am yours. I want to build a life that is not just shared but joined. What do you say? She kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and joy she felt into the gesture. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. Yes. Yes, I will marry you. They were wed in the autumn when the leaves turned gold and red, and the air carried the scent of apples and wood smoke. The ceremony was simple, held in the clearing behind the way station, with the villagers and travelers gathered to witness. Fenna wore a dress of deep green, embroidered with white flowers by the women of the hamlet. Cyrus wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair combed back, his eyes bright with happiness. The vows they exchanged were their own, words spoken from the heart. Cyrus promised to stand beside her in sickness and health, to honor her gifts, to love her without reservation. Fenna promised to share his burdens, to fill his days with laughter, to be his partner in all things. When they kissed, the gathered crowd erupted in cheers, and Fenna felt as though her heart might burst with joy. The celebration lasted into the night with food and drink and music. Fenna danced with Cyrus, her hand in his, her body pressed close. She looked around at the faces of the people who had become her community, her family, and felt a gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Later, when the guests had departed and the way station was quiet, Fenna and Cyrus sat together in the clinic. They had lit a single candle, its flame flickering softly. Cyrus poured tea, the ritual that had become the foundation of their life together. He handed her a cup and she cradled it in her hands. To us, he said, raising his own cup. To us, she echoed. They drank, the tea warm and comforting. Fenna set down her cup and looked at the man who was now her husband. I never thought I could have this. A home, a partner, a future. I spent so many years running, convinced I did not deserve it, and then you offered me tea and everything changed. I never thought I could heal from losing Elliot, Cyrus said. I thought the grief would consume me, that I would spend the rest of my life haunted by what I could not save. But you showed me that healing is not about forgetting. It is about carrying the past with grace and still choosing to live. You gave me my life back, Fenna. We gave each other our lives back, she said. He smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Winter returned, bringing snow and cold and long, dark nights. But the clinic was warm and the work was steady, and Fenna and Cyrus faced it together. They treated frostbite and broken bones, fevers and infections. They saved lives and comforted the dying. They built something real and lasting, something that mattered. One evening, as they prepared for bed, Fenna said, "There is something I have been thinking about." "What is that?" Cyrus asked, pulling off his boots. "I want to train others. Young people who want to learn healing. We could take on apprentices, teach them what we know. That way, even after we are gone, the work will continue." Cyrus looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "That is a good idea. A very good idea. We could start in the spring, put out word that we are looking for students. You think people would send their children to study with an orc? I think people would send their children to study with the best healers in the region, and that is what we are, Fenna. Together we are the best." She smiled, warmth flooding through her. "Yes, yes, we are." The following spring, they took on their first apprentice, a young human girl named Iris who had a gift for remembering plants and their uses. She was eager and bright, and Fenna delighted in teaching her. Cyrus took on a boy named Thomas, who was clumsy but determined, and who showed real promise in setting bones. The clinic became livelier, filled with questions and laughter and the occasional mistake. But Fenna and Cyrus were patient, guiding their students with the same care they showed their patients. Years passed. The apprentices grew skilled and moved on, establishing their own practices in distant settlements. New students came to take their places. The clinic expanded again, adding rooms for the apprentices to live in. Fenna's garden grew larger, producing enough herbs to supply not just their clinic but others in the region. Cyrus's skills became renowned, and people traveled for days to seek his expertise. Through it all, Fenna and Cyrus remained the heart of the operation. They worked side by side, their partnership as strong as ever. They argued sometimes over treatments or priorities, but the arguments never lasted. They loved each other too much, trusted each other too deeply, to let resentment take root. And every evening, without fail, they shared tea. The ritual that had begun as a gift offered in a snowstorm had become the thread that wove their lives together. One autumn afternoon, when the air was crisp and the leaves were falling, Fenna stood in the garden, her hands on her swollen belly. She was 6 months along, and the baby kicked vigorously beneath her ribs. Cyrus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her and resting his hands over hers. "How are you feeling?" he asked, tired, excited, a little scared. "You are going to be an amazing mother, and you are going to be an amazing father." He kissed the top of her head. "Do you have a name yet? I have been thinking. For a boy, Elliot, if you would like that." Cyrus went very still. Then he turned her gently to face him, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You would do that. He was important to you. He shaped who you are. I want to honor that. And for a girl," Fenna smiled. "I was thinking Alara, it means light, Alara or Elliot. Both are perfect." The baby was born in the deep of winter, on a night when the snow fell softly outside and the fire burned bright in the hearth. It was a daughter, small and perfect, with green skin and her father's slate-gray eyes. They named her Alara, and Cyrus wept as he held her for the first time, marveling at the tiny life they had created. Fenna watched him, her heart overflowing. She thought of the girl she had been, cast out and alone, convinced she was cursed. And she thought of the woman she had become, surrounded by love and purpose. She had found her courage, not in grand gestures or heroic acts, but in the quiet moments of vulnerability, in accepting kindness when it was offered, in speaking the truth of her heart, in choosing to stay when every instinct told her to run. Cyrus looked up at her, his smile radiant. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For everything. for staying, for loving me, for giving me this." "You gave me just as much," Fenna said. "You gave me a home, a family, a reason to believe in myself." They sat together in the quiet room, their daughter cradled between them, and Fenna knew that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfection, but presence. Not the absence of pain, but the courage to keep loving despite it. Alara grew quickly, a bright and curious child who delighted in the clinic and the garden. She followed her parents everywhere, asking endless questions and demanding to help with everything. Fenna taught her the names of plants and how to prepare simple remedies. Cyrus showed her how to bandage wounds and set splints. She learned quickly, her small hands deft and careful, her mind sharp. When Alara was 3, Fenna became pregnant again. This time it was a boy. They named him Elliot, and Cyrus held his son with a reverence that made Fenna's heart ache. She could see the healing in his eyes, the way he had taken the grief that had once defined him and transformed it into something beautiful. The children grew, and the clinic thrived. Fenna and Cyrus aged gracefully, their hair graying, their movements slowing, but their love as strong as ever. They trained more apprentices, treated countless patients, and built a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. One evening, when they were both well into their 50s and the children were grown with families of their own, Fenna and Cyrus sat together in the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Cyrus poured tea, the ritual as familiar and comforting as breathing. He handed her a cup and they sat in companionable silence, watching the light fade. "You remember the first time I made you tea?" Cyrus asked. Fenna smiled. "Of course, you refused to let me pay. I thought you were strange. I thought you were beautiful and sad. I wanted to help. You did more than help. You saved me. We saved each other." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "Yes, we did." They sat together as the stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with light. And Fenna thought about the journey that had brought her here, to this moment, to this man. She thought about the courage it had taken to share her heart, to let herself be vulnerable, to believe she was worthy of love. And she thought about the quiet man who had offered her tea on a snowy night, and in doing so had offered her the world. "I love you, Cyrus Jenson," she said. "I love you, Fenna Jenson," he replied. And in the garden they had built together, surrounded by the herbs they had grown and the life they had made, they sat beneath the stars, two souls bound by love and healed by grace. Their story a testament to the courage it takes to open one's heart, and the beauty that comes when two wounded people choose to heal together. Alara came to visit the next morning, bringing her own daughter, a bright-eyed girl of 5 named Lily. The child ran to her grandparents, throwing her arms around Fenna's legs and chattering about the flowers she had picked on the way. Cyrus scooped her up, his eyes crinkling with delight, and carried her into the clinic to show her the new apprentice who had arrived the week before. Fenna watched them go, her heart full. She had built this. Not alone, but with Cyrus by her side, they had created something that would outlast them both. A place of healing and hope. A family bound by love rather than blood. A legacy of courage and compassion. Alara stood beside her, watching her father and daughter disappear into the clinic. "You look happy, Mother." "I am," Fenna said simply. "I am glad. You deserve it." Fenna turned to her daughter, seeing so much of Cyrus in her features, but also traces of herself. The green skin, the pointed ears, the quiet strength that came from knowing who you were and refusing to apologize for it. "So do you, my dear. Never forget that." Alara smiled and hugged her mother tightly. "I will not." That afternoon, Fenna and Cyrus worked in the clinic alongside their apprentice, a young orc man named Garrett who had traveled from the eastern hills seeking training. He was skilled and respectful, and Fenna enjoyed teaching him. Cyrus showed him how to examine a sprained ankle, explaining the difference between a minor strain and a serious tear. Garrett listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. When the day's work was done, Fenna and Cyrus retreated to their room. Cyrus made tea and they sat together by the window, looking out over the garden. The evening light was soft and golden, and the air smelled of lavender and thyme. "I have been thinking," Cyrus said. "About what?" "About how much has changed. When I met you, I was drowning in grief. I could barely function. And now look at us. We have a family, a thriving practice, apprentices carrying on our work. It is more than I ever dreamed possible. You did the hard work, Cyrus. You chose to heal. I just walked beside you. You did more than that. You showed me it was possible. You gave me hope when I had none." Fenner reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "And you gave me a home. You saw past what I was and loved who I am. That is no small thing." They sat in silence for a while, content simply to be together. The years had not diminished their love, only deepened it. They knew each other's rhythms, each other's thoughts, each other's hearts. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. They had built a life that was wholly theirs, and it was good. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Cyrus turned to Fenna. "Do you remember what you told me the night we decided to work together to fight the fever?" "I said many things that night. You said we would face it together, and we did. We have faced everything together." "Yes," Fenna said softly. "And we always will." He kissed her, slow and gentle, a kiss that held decades of love and trust. And Fenna thought that this, right here, was the greatest gift she had ever received. Not just the love of a good man, but the knowledge that she was enough, that she had always been enough. That the courage to share her heart had led her to a life beyond anything she had imagined. The stars came out, filling the sky with their ancient light. Fenna and Cyrus sat together in the window, two souls who had found each other in a snowstorm and chosen, every day since, to keep finding each other. Their love was not a fairy tale, with grand gestures and dramatic declarations. It was quieter than that, built on shared tea and gentle hands and the steady work of showing up for each other, day after day. And in the end, that was the truest magic of all. Years continued to pass, marked by the turning of seasons and the growth of their family. Elliot followed in his parents' footsteps, becoming a skilled herbalist who traveled the region much as his mother once had. He married a kind-hearted human woman named Grace, and they had 3 children who visited often, filling the clinic with noise and laughter. Alara took over much of the day-to-day running of the clinic, working alongside her parents and training new apprentices. She had her father's steady hands and her mother's intuitive understanding of plants. She married late, to an orc man who had come seeking treatment and stayed for her smile. Together they expanded the garden, adding new varieties of medicinal plants and experimenting with techniques for extending the growing season. Fenna and Cyrus gradually stepped back from the work, spending more time in the garden and with their grandchildren. They became the heart of the clinic in a different way, offering wisdom and guidance to the younger healers, sharing stories of the early days, reminding everyone why the work mattered. One spring morning, when Fenna was 63 and Cyrus 65, they woke to find the first flowers blooming in the garden. Crocuses pushed through the last of the snow, their purple and yellow petals bright against the white. Fenna dressed slowly, her joints stiff with age, and made her way outside. Cyrus joined her, moving with the same careful deliberation. They walked through the garden together, admiring the signs of new life. Fenna knelt to touch a crocus, marveling at its delicate beauty. Cyrus helped her stand, and they continued their circuit hand in hand. "I never tire of this," Fenna said. "The way spring returns, no matter how harsh the winter, it gives me hope." You have always been my hope, Cyrus said. She looked at him, seeing the lines that time had etched on his face, the silver in his hair, the way age had softened his features. He was still the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "And you are mine," she said. They spent the day working in the garden, preparing the soil for planting. It was gentle work, not taxing, and they took frequent breaks to rest and drink tea. Alara brought them lunch, and they ate together in the sunshine, talking about nothing and everything. As the sun began to set, Fenna and Cyrus returned to their room. Cyrus made tea, the ritual as ingrained as breathing, and they settled into their chairs by the window. The light was fading, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. "I have lived a good life," Fenna said suddenly. Cyrus looked at her, concern flickering in his eyes. "You speak as though it is ending." "Not ending, but I am aware of its shape now, the arc of it. I was lost for so long, and then I found you. We built this together, and now our children are carrying it forward. It is a good shape, Cyrus, a complete one." He reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "I am not ready to let you go. I am not going anywhere, not yet. But when the time comes, you will know that I lived fully, that I loved deeply, that I found my courage and used it to build something beautiful. And that is enough." Tears slipped down Cyrus's cheeks. "You are enough. You have always been enough." "So are you, my love. So are you." They sat together as the night deepened, their hands clasped, their hearts joined. And Fenna knew, with a certainty that went beyond words, that she had found what she had been searching for all those years ago. Not just a home or a partner, but a purpose. A reason to believe that her life mattered, that her work had value, that she was worthy of love. The quiet man who had offered her tea on a snowy night had given her the world, and she had given him hers in return. Together, they had healed each other's wounds and built a legacy that would endure. And in the end, that was all anyone could hope for. The years that followed were gentle ones. Fenna and Cyrus continued their slow, peaceful existence, spending their days in the garden and with their family. They watched their grandchildren grow, delighting in each milestone and accomplishment. They trained one final apprentice, a young orc woman named Vera who reminded Fenna of herself at that age, hungry for knowledge and desperate to prove her worth. Fenna took Vera under her wing, teaching her everything she knew. She showed her how to identify plants in all seasons, how to prepare tinctures and salves, how to listen to what the body was saying. And she told her stories, not just of herbs and healing, but of courage and hope, of the importance of vulnerability, of the strength it takes to open one's heart. Vera listened with rapt attention, soaking up every word, and when her training was complete, she hugged Fenna tightly and whispered, "Thank you. You showed me that I can be more than what others expect, that I can choose my own path." Fenna held her close, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, my dear, you can, and you will." Vera left to establish her own practice in a distant settlement, carrying with her the knowledge and compassion Fenna had imparted. And Fenna watched her go with pride, knowing that the work would continue long after she was gone. One autumn evening, when the leaves were turning and the air carried the first hint of winter, Fenna and Cyrus sat together in the garden. The sun was setting, and the sky was ablaze with color. Cyrus poured tea, and they sipped it slowly, savoring the warmth and the familiar taste. "Do you remember the first time we sat here together?" Fenna asked. "I do. You were sorting herbs, and I brought you tea. You told me about your mother. And you told me about Elliot. We were both so broken, Cyrus, and yet somehow we found a way to heal. We found a way together." Fenna smiled. "Yes, together." They sat in silence, watching the light fade and the stars emerge, and Fenna thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The fear and the courage, the pain and the joy, the countless small choices that had woven their lives together. She thought about the girl she had been, cast out and alone, and the woman she had become, surrounded by love and purpose. And she felt a profound gratitude for all of it, even the hard parts, because they had brought her here. "I love you, Cyrus Jenson," she said, as she had said countless times before. "I love you, Fenna Jenson," he replied, as he always did. And in the garden they had planted together, surrounded by the life they had built, they sat beneath the stars, their hearts full, their souls at peace, their story a testament to the power of love and the courage it takes to share one's heart. The seasons turned, and winter arrived in earnest. Snow blanketed the garden, covering the herbs and flowers in a pristine white layer. Fenna and Cyrus spent more time indoors now, tending the fire and enjoying the warmth. They read together, reminisced, and welcomed visitors when they came. Their children and grandchildren were frequent guests, filling the clinic with laughter and life. One particularly cold evening, as they sat by the fire with their tea, Cyrus said, "I want to thank you." "For what?" Fenna asked, though she was smiling. "For sharing your heart with me. For trusting me enough to let me in. I know how hard that was for you after everything you had been through, but you did it anyway, and it changed my life." Fenna felt tears prick her eyes. "You made it easy, Cyrus. You offered me tea and kindness when I expected nothing. You saw me, truly saw me, and you chose to love me anyway. That is a rare gift." "You are a rare gift," he said. They kissed, and the fire crackled softly beside them, and outside the snow fell in quiet curtains, blanketing the world in peace. In the spring, when the snow melted and the first green shoots appeared in the garden, Fenna and Cyrus emerged from their winter cocoon. They were slower now, their movements careful and deliberate, but their spirits were undimmed. They worked in the garden, planting new seeds and tending the established plants. They welcomed the new apprentices who arrived seeking training. They celebrated the birth of a new great-grandchild, a boy named Owen, who had Fenna's green skin and Cyrus's gray eyes. Life continued, rich and full, and Fenna marveled at the beauty of it all. She had been given a second chance, a new beginning, and she had seized it with both hands. She had found the courage to share her heart, and in doing so had discovered a love and a life beyond her wildest dreams. One summer afternoon, as she sat in the garden with Cyrus, surrounded by the buzzing of bees and the scent of blooming lavender, she said, "I need to tell you something." He looked at her, concern flickering in his eyes. "What is it?" "I am happy. Truly, deeply happy. I wanted you to know that. Whatever comes, however much time we have left, I am happy, because I have you and I have this, and it is more than enough." Cyrus took her hand, his grip strong despite his age. "I am happy too. You gave me that, Fenna. You gave me a reason to keep living after Elliot died. You showed me that life could still be beautiful even with the scars." "We both carry scars," she said softly, "but they do not define us. We define ourselves." "Yes," he agreed, "we do." They sat together in the garden, their hands clasped, their hearts joined, and Fenna knew that this was what forever looked like. Not an endless stretch of time, but a series of moments, each one precious, each one chosen. They had chosen each other, again and again, in 1,000 small ways. And that choice, that commitment, had built a love that would endure long after they were gone. The years continued to unfold, gentle and slow. Fenna and Cyrus grew older, their hair turning white, their steps growing more careful. But their love remained constant, a steady flame that warmed them both. They continued to work in the garden, to welcome visitors, to share tea by the fire. They watched their family grow and flourish, taking pride in each new generation, and when the end finally came, it was peaceful. Fenna passed first, on a spring morning when the garden was in full bloom. She died in her sleep, with Cyrus beside her, her hand in his. Her last words, whispered in the gray light of dawn, were, "I love you." Cyrus held her for a long time after she was gone, his tears falling onto her still face. But even in his grief, he felt a profound gratitude. She had given him everything. She had shown him how to live again, how to love again, how to hope. And though she was gone, the legacy they had built together remained. The clinic, the garden, the apprentices, the family, all of it was a testament to the life they had shared. He buried her in the garden, beneath the lavender she had loved. And every day he visited her grave, bringing fresh flowers and speaking to her as though she were still there. He told her about the patients they treated, the new apprentices who arrived, the antics of the great-grandchildren. He poured 2 cups of tea and set one beside her headstone, never forgetting the ritual that had bound them together. Cyrus lived for 3 more years, tending the garden and the clinic with the help of his children. And when his time came, he went peacefully in the same room where Fenna had died, with their daughter Alara holding his hand. His last words were, "Tell her I am coming." They buried him beside Fenna, beneath the lavender, and the family gathered to remember them both. Stories were told of the quiet man and the orc woman who had found each other in a snowstorm and built a legacy of healing and hope. Of the courage it had taken to share their hearts and the love that had grown from that act of vulnerability. The clinic continued, run by Alara and her children, and then by their children after them. The garden flourished, producing herbs that healed countless ailments. And the story of Fenna and Cyrus became legend, a tale told to new apprentices to remind them why the work mattered, to show them that love and courage could transform lives, that 2 broken people could heal each other, and that the simplest gestures like offering a cup of tea could change the world. In the garden where they lay side by side, the lavender bloomed every spring, filling the air with its sweet scent. And those who visited swore they could feel a presence there, a warmth and peace that spoke of love enduring beyond death. The legacy of the quiet man and the orc woman lived on, a testament to the power of sharing one's heart and the beauty that comes when 2 souls choose to heal together.